What's up, guys? Parker Talks is back, and today we are going to be discussing the college football season is finally here as I am continuing in these sports videos for this week. Today we're going to be discussing the Big 12 and the ACC. We will discuss the SEC later because they will be starting 2 weeks after the Big 12 and ACC are starting play. So let's get started. So first off, the question is this college football season going to work with COVID? Now, when I was discussing with the NFL and how I think that's going to work, it's a little bit different with college football because these are all students. They are all, having to go to classes as well. You can't have a bubble with college football. There's going to be cases. There's no going around that. There's going to be cases, but there's a lot of players on the team, so I'm not afraid of games not being able to be played, yet there have been some games that have been postponed already. Hopefully those games can be played at a later date. This is going to be a very wacky season. Hopefully it doesn't get too crazy. And also a lot of football teams are allowing fans. Some are not allowing any fans at all. Compared to NFL football, they're going to be allowing a bit more fans. Now, I've said a lot of negative stuff. I'm really hoping that this season can work. I don't have too many positives, honestly, for the season, but I'm very hopeful that this season can be fully played out. So as you guys know, unfortunately, the Big Ten and the Pac-12, two Power 5 conferences, will not be playing this season. Also, the Mountain West and the MAC conference are not going to be playing as well. So that cuts off a lot of teams. But the teams that we will be discussing today are from the ACC, the Big 12, and possibly the best non-Power 5 team that's going to be playing this season. So first, we're going to the ACC. So I'm going to be showing you guys my standings right now for the ACC. Now, I haven't added the records for the teams that are not above 500 because I don't know too much about those teams, so I don't want to show you guys a terrible record that I don't know too much about those teams. And also remember, Notre Dame is an independent that's going to be added to the ACC, so that includes 15 schools in this conference. Now, I have Clemson at 11-0, NC State at 9-2, also Notre Dame at 9-2, Miami at 8-3, Florida State at 7-4, Louisville at 7-4, Pittsburgh at 6-5, and those are all the records I'm going to show you guys right now. So I have Clemson being 11-0, being undefeated. Trevor Lawrence has not lost a game in his college football career, excluding the national championship. He played against an incredible LSU football team and probably one of the best college football teams I've seen in a long time. I think there's nobody in their way. Looking at the schedule right now, there's nobody in their way that's going to stop Clemson. They have the best quarterback in college football. They have the best running back in college football, too, with Travis Etienne. They always have a great defense. They'll always replace everybody, just like how Alabama does as well. So even though it's no surprise that I have Clemson at 11-0, it might be a surprise to some that I have North Carolina ahead of Notre Dame. I have North Carolina actually beating Notre Dame. They play them at home, but it's on a Friday night. They both have the same record, but I still have them in front of them. They have quarterback Sam Howell and also Coach Mack Brown, who could be the Coach of the Year for the ACC. I have them beating Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's going to be a good team as well. They have Ian Book, who's a veteran, having played a few years already, and they also have one of the top running backs in the ACC, Kyron Williams. So all three of those teams are going to be very good: Clemson, North Carolina, and Notre Dame. As for some of the other teams I haven't mentioned, De'Aaron King, a transfer from Houston, is now the quarterback at Miami. I think that's going to bring Miami up in the standings at 8-3. I think Miami's going to have a better year this year. And also Louisville, Michael Cunningham is the quarterback for Louisville, one of the other better quarterbacks in the ACC as well. And also Florida State. I think Florida State is getting back out of those years of rebuilding, and they can now become that team where they once were, not this year, but they're getting back to that point. So I have them at 7-4. So for the ACC championship, it would be Clemson versus North Carolina. I think North Carolina can keep it close in the first quarter of that game, but I would have Clemson prevailing and winning the ACC championship. Next up is the Big 12, so I can show you guys the standings right now, same process. I'm not going to show you guys the records of the teams that are not above 500 because I don't know much about them except for Kansas, coached by Les Miles. They just don't have the star players they need to be that good. Number 1, I have Texas actually at 9-1, and 2, Oklahoma State at 9-1. Oklahoma at 3 at 8-2. I know that's the big factor that I have, different than many people have. I have Oklahoma at 3 instead of 1. Iowa State I have at 4 at 7-3, and then Texas Tech and then Baylor both at 6-4. So that's right, I have the Texas Longhorns at the number 1 spot in the Big 12, also beating Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry game that will be still at the Cotton Bowl this year. Their quarterback is Sam Ehlinger, which, if you know Kirk Herbstreit, he loves Sam Ehlinger. They have probably the best defensive player in the Big 12 as well, Joseph Osai. And I think if this is any year for Texas, this is the year. Also coached by Tom Herman. If they don't win the Big 12 this year, even after Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield, all those quarterbacks from Oklahoma having left, they now have a redshirt freshman quarterback, or maybe redshirt sophomore. This has to be the year for Texas, so that's why I have them at the number 1 spot, and I think it would be disappointing for them if they don't get there. At number 2 at 9-1, I have Oklahoma State. Actually, instead of Oklahoma, I have Oklahoma State also beating Oklahoma. And they have probably one of the greatest running backs, other than Etienne, in the country, Chuba Hubbard, at running back, and also a great wide receiver, Tylan Wallace. I think Oklahoma State is also going to have a great year. They're ranked number 15 right now, and I think they could definitely get up there in the rankings and beat teams like Oklahoma. Now, even though I have Oklahoma at the 3rd spot, I wouldn't be surprised if they win the Big 12 again because they are coached by Lincoln Riley. Quarterback Spencer Rattler has only played a few snaps so far, but he's going to have some great weapons with Kennedy Brooks and Charleston Rambo, running back and wide receiver for Oklahoma. And also Ronnie Perkins, who plays defensive line, also another great defensive player in the Big 12. The next team is Iowa State at 7-3, and senior quarterback Brock Purdy is the quarterback for Iowa State. They're always a sneaky team. They also have Charlie Kolar, who's probably the best tight end in the country. Iowa State, I think, can get a lot of those upsets, and I actually have them upsetting my number 1 team in the Big 12, Texas. And I think they can do some other upsets against some other teams as well. They're a very good team, and you got to watch out for them. So in the Big 12 championship, I have in my books Texas at number 1 and Oklahoma State at number 2. And I'm going to try to stick with Texas, even though sometimes I can't trust them. I'm going to trust them for this year to try to win the Big 12 championship. And something else I forgot is the scheduling for both the ACC and Big 12 are a bit different. The Big 12 is playing 10 games, I believe. Yes, 10 games. One of them is a non-conference game, and the ACC is playing 11 games, and one is a non-conference. Finally, who can be the best non-Power 5 team this year? And can there be 2 non-Power 5 teams that could play in the New Year's Six if there is going to be a New Year's Six at the end of the year? Now, you got to look at the American Athletic Conference, which has a bunch of great teams: SMU, UCF, Cincinnati, Memphis. So many good teams and a lot of good quarterbacks too. Probably the best quarterback in the American Athletic is Shane Buechele at SMU. UCF has Dylan Gabriel. And I think this is going to be very, very close in the American Athletic, as it always is. But I'm going to go with UCF because even after Scott Frost left UCF, they've still been a very good team. I didn't think they were going to be an amazing team like they were with Scott Frost, but they're still always up there. And I think they can be the best non-Power 5 team that can make it to the New Year's Six because they have so many assets and a great defense as well. So that leaves me to my college football playoff bracket prediction. Now, it hasn't even been announced, I don't think, if there's going to be a college football playoff, but I'm going to do this anyway, just in case there is one. I really hope there will be. So I know I haven't talked about the SEC. That will be in a later video right before the SEC starts play, but I'm going to have Alabama and Florida, both from the SEC, in that bracket. I'm going to have 2 SEC teams to be in that bracket. If there's any year to have 2 teams in one conference represent in the college football playoff, it's this year, since there's only 3 Power 5 conferences playing right now. And then I'll also have Texas from the Big 12, which I mentioned, and Clemson from the ACC. So my rankings, I think I would have it at Clemson number 1, Alabama at 2, Texas at 3, and Florida at 4. So those are my rankings for my college football playoff. My national championship, Clemson, Alabama, probably no surprise to that. Basically, everybody is picking Clemson and Alabama again. They're just on another level compared to the rest of the country. And it's going to be really close. Alabama always, and Clemson, always just replaces everybody. Like, they'll just replace with 5 stars. But I think this is Clemson's year again, with Trevor Lawrence not winning in the national championship last year against LSU. I think this is his year to bounce back. So that's all for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to have a video later this week talking about the top games for this weekend. And this was just really a in-depth predictions video for college football playoff, excluding the SEC, because I'll talk about that later. Sorry about that noise earlier. I think my brother was sad that I didn't pick Georgia to be in the college football playoff since he's a Georgia fan. But other than that, that's it. So thank you guys, and see ya.